أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وآله الطاهرين. قال الله في كتابه الكريم أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الذين يحبون أن تشيع الفاحشة في الذين آمنوا لهم عذاب أليم في الدنيا والآخرة والله يعلم وأنتم لا تعلمون. صدق الله العلي العظيم. Illuminate your hearts and minds with a loud salawat ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. For the past nights, we've been going over a khutbah or a sermon from the Imam Ali alayhi salam, which has been recorded inside of the Nahjul Balagha, the third sermon, called the khutbah of Shiqshiqiyya. In this khutbah or sermon, the Imam Ali alayhi salam goes through the different tragedies and hardships that he has gone through after the passing of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. We see that up until now there have been many things that the Imam Ali alayhi salam has went through. But though he went through many different hardships and the people knew that he had so many things going on, no one stood up. The Imam Ali alayhi salam, in his time, how much companions did he have? How much people were actually willing to lead a rebellion with him? 4 people: Salman, Miqdad, Abu Dhar and Zubayr. The Imam Ali alayhi salam only had 4 companions, and he went through all of these hardships because no one was willing to stand up for him. Now, in our time, in our day, we also have a Ali of our time, the Imam Mahdi ajalallahu ta'ala farajahu sharif. And so there are millions of Shi'as, there are many thousands of Shi'as in the world that exist today, but how many of them are truly following and are truly companions of their Imam? We are all Shi'as, we all believe in the lessons and the things that were taught from the Ahlul Bayt. And so we also believe that the Imam Mahdi alayhi salam is here in our time, and he is in his ghaiba, his occultation, he's hidden. And it is for us to be able to recognize him, to have a ma'rifat of him, and for us to be able to follow him and not let what happened to Imam Ali alayhi salam happen to the Imam Mahdi alayhi salam, but for us to be one of his soldiers and companions. Some might say that, well, it's true, the Imam Ali alayhi salam, the Imam Mahdi alayhi salam, it has been predicted that he will surely rise and he will have 300 companions. But that doesn't guarantee that we will be one of his companions. That doesn't guarantee that we will be among the people who he is satisfied with. There might be so many Shi'as in this world, so many people that say they love the Imam Mahdi alayhi salam, but it is all simply just the movement of the tongue. We as Shi'as cannot guarantee, and as Muslims we can't guarantee that the Imam Mahdi alayhi salam will be satisfied of us. And when Imam Mahdi alayhi salam comes, he will even slash or kill the people who say that they believe in Islam, but they ruin the path of Islam, the people who have corrupted the religion. So there's no guarantee for us to be able to be a part of the soldier of the Imam Mahdi alayhi salam unless we make a move. Please recite aloud salawat ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. There are many different things, many different characteristics, many different traits that might limit someone to not being able to reach a status where they are at least looked as prideful or look as happy in the eyes of the Imam Mahdi alayhi salam. There are so many different characteristics or traits that when the Imam Mahdi alayhi salam sees in one person, he might be dissatisfied, he might be unhappy. The Imam Mahdi alayhi salam is definitely surely going to come. And there are some signs that have passed by that show that his return is becoming closer. So for us to understand that his time is closer, now I won't be able to dictate when he's coming. Of course, no one can say that, for if you do that, that's shirk. That's haram. Whatever you're doing, it's forbidden to be able to dictate the time of the Imam Mahdi alayhi salam. But that doesn't mean there's not a possibility that his dhuhur or his rising might not be near. The Imam Mahdi alayhi salam, when he looks at each and every single one of us, he can tell from the first letter to the last letter of the alphabet about what goes on in our daily lives. As we say in Farsi, as alif to ya. from A to Z. The Imam Mahdi alayhi salam, of course, when he sees us, he'll be able to recognize us and see how much we actually honor him and how much recognition we have of him. When a person limits themselves with the different characteristics, they of course fall off of the path and fall off of being able to be recognized as someone important to the Imam Mahdi alayhi salam. There are so many different things that which may limit someone. For example, takabbur. For example, greed. And one that I feel that might be very popular among our generation and time is looking for the faults of others. As we say in Farsi, aib jui, aib jui. Looking for the faults of others and trying to use their faults against them. Now, when someone has lots of faults themselves, lots of flaws themselves, lots of different weaknesses, they might hide it from their own selves and try to look for the flaws and faults of others. That regarding this, the Prophet, our Prophet, the Prophet Muhammad, says that for someone to look at the faults of others, blame someone for their faults and their flaws, it's like they're doing it themselves. For looking at the faults of others, not looking, but blaming others for their faults, is like a oath that you have made with yourself that in the future you will not die unless you have done that fault, unless you have done that flaw. So many of us might take the problems of others and make it big in our eyes and try to make ourselves look better, try to give ourselves self-esteem. But the Prophet ﷺ himself is saying that for someone to look at the flaws of others and take them into such a way that they themselves think they're bigger, definitely they will not die unless they have done this flaw, unless they have done this fault. Now, who am I to look at the flaws of others when I myself have many different problems that I have between myself? Who am I to look at the flaws of others when I myself have different problems myself? This aibjui, or in Arabic some might call it man yu'ibun nas, is a characteristic looks very similar to takabbur. A characteristic in which someone takes self-esteem to such a point where they think they're better than others. In a hadith from the Imam Baqir alayhi salam, he says the closest position to kufr, the closest position to paganism, is that of a person who takes the faults and looks at the flaws of others, though they themselves have 1,000 more flaws. And if they don't have a flaw, this flaw, looking for the flaws, this aibjui itself is a flaw that is enough. For me to be able to look at the flaws of others, and myself to have my own flaws and look at them and start making fun of people for it, start blaming others for it, start calling them out for it, is something very resented. Because why would I do such a thing? Why would I be such a fool to look at the flaws of others when I myself am full of flaws and full of faults? And for example, some people might say that I don't have a flaw, so does that mean I have the right to look at the flaws of others, to blame the others for their faults and flaws? The Imam Baqir alayhi salam in the continuation has said that even if you don't have a flaw, that you know of, this flaw taking or looking for the flaws of others and faults for the others, this itself is enough of a flaw. In another hadith from the Imam Baqir alayhi salam, he says it is enough of a aib, it is enough of a fault or a flaw for someone to look the other way from their own flaws and count the others as something very big, something very significant. Look at the other people's flaws, look at others' flaws and faults as something big and try to lower them down for it, even though I myself have this flaw. Please recite Allah salawat ala Muhammadin wa ala Muhammad. Now, looking at others' flaws, seeing others' faults and flaws so that I can make myself feel better is one step, one very bad aib, one very, very bad flaw that can cause a chain of different faults and aibs that might occur. For example, I have caught the flaw of another person. I've looked at their faults and I've seen that they've done something wrong. And so I'm with my friends and I'm hanging out with them. I want to bring something up. I want to bring a topic up for us to talk about. And then I bring the fault or the flaw of this person. This is the first chain. I am interested in the flaw of others. I want to lower them down. And I'm with my friends. I want to talk with them. And so I bring the fault of this person with the flaw of this person as a topic for me and the others to discuss. Now, we have something called ghaibat, or in English known as backbiting. Another flaw or another characteristic very dangerous, that in a hadith, the Imam alayhi salam says that whoever does the ghaibat or the backbiting of another person, it's as if they have eaten their raw meat. And we even have a story from the Prophet, our Prophet, the Prophet Muhammad. One of the companions were backbiting behind another person's back. The Prophet ﷺ then told them to spit out the meat that you have in your mouth. The companion was confused. What does he mean? I haven't eaten anything. There's nothing in my mouth. But then the Prophet ﷺ told him again, spit out the meat that you have in your mouth. After a few times, he said, okay, the Prophet told me to do this, I'll do it. I mean, there's no difference. Whether I do it or not, it's not going to make a difference. He spit out and he saw that there was a piece of meat that was residing in his mouth which fell out. He was surprised. Why was there meat in my mouth? And it was not cooked meat, it was raw meat. Why was this in my mouth? The Prophet ﷺ then told him, this is the meat of the person that you have done the backbiting of. Now let's return back to Aib or looking at the faults of others. For me to be able to look at the faults of others, look at their flaws and bring them into different discussions and topics, one chain to another flaw, one flaw to another flaw, this causes my one flaw of looking at the flaws of others to bonus, bringing it as a topic for my friends. When I do this, I'm eating the meat of the other person, the raw meat, and it's considered very bad. That definitely those who do ghaibat will be in the fire of hell. When I do the ghaibat of the flaws of others, I myself am calling out their flaws and showing them with my friends or the people I'm discussing with. Now, not only do I get the sin of doing this ghaibat, and not only with this ghaibat, but as well as looking for the flaws of that person, aib, but also the listeners who are listening are also getting the sin. For when ghaibat is being done and I am listening to someone who does ghaibat, I get the sin of their ghaibat itself. They're backbiting, I'm not doing anything, but because they're backbiting and I'm listening to it, I also am part of the sin. I'm also am part of what they have done. Now these are just one chain to another chain, one fault to another bigger fault. Aib to ghaibat. Now continue. I add another chain in namami. I'm talking with my friends about the flaws of this one person. I'm talking about them and I'm doing the ghaibat of the other person, the backbiting of the other person. Now, because I told my friends the flaws or the faults of this person, they themselves are dishonest and disheartened in trying to keep a relationship with that person. Namami, also known as ruining the relationship between people. When I bring the flaws of others, it can cause there to be disruption between the relationship of others. And even in a hadith from the Imam alayhi salam, he says that the namam, those who ruin the relationship between other people, are the worst and disliked people in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And when we look at these chains, they all return back to Aib just this one single thing, this one single very big flaw that I turned even bigger for myself. Now, we must all understand and consider that every single one of us is not perfect. No one in the world is perfect except for the Ahlul Bayt and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And for me to look at the flaws of others and faults of others to make myself feel good, to bring them down is a very big fault in itself. I might say that I don't have a flaw, but this fault or this flaw or aib of looking at other people's faults or flaws or faults itself is one of the biggest. And just because of this one single flaw, this one single looking for the faults of others can cause chains to happen, can cause me to go from aib to ghaibat to namami, and all of these together making me do something very disliked in the eyes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And all came from one single chain. Now, the topic is about aib. obviously. But we have to understand that from one flaw, one person can also make a whole chain reaction out of one single problem. So inshallah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala may watch over us and take care of us and make sure that we do not make chain reactions through flaws and not look at the flaws of others to make ourselves feel better. I thank you for giving me your time. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa alihi tahirin.